Hi, and welcome back to Lean In Leaders. I am Shad Morkheim, and I'm with my partner here, Larry Bader. Larry, it's been a while since we've been in studio, but it's great to be back and great to see you as we enter the fall season.
As always,
Yes, sir. And
pleasure.
so today we have the fortune of Kate McKinnon joining us, who's going to talk a little bit about some project work and some HR stuff that she's done and a book she's writing. So, Larry, I'll let you run with introduction and we'll go from there.
Great. Thanks, Chad. And it is awesome to be back and sharing some good, back to have an interview. So we haven't interviewed in a while.
Yes.
So Kate,
Yeah.
got to know Kate probably over the past year and told me over the past few months, maybe 4 months, that you're writing a book. A little bit about Kate. So Kate's been in the human capital space for about 15 plus years. Last position as a head of HR in a company called Playfi. Has also worked in numerous verticals across the HR space as an HR leader. Recently started her own organization called Kate McKinnon HR Solutions. And then, just to make life more interesting, decided to venture down the path of crazy authorship, which is a real interesting prospect. And that's what we thought would be really great to have Kate join us with today, talk about this idea of this book. So we're going to get into that. But Kate, just want to welcome you first into the studio and for being an interviewee on Lean In Leader. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're excited.
Excited to be the first interview back.
Yeah,
Yeah,
in
for
a
a
while.
while.
So what we really do want to talk about is this book. I don't want to steal your thunder, and I don't want to misrepresent it, but high level, what was intriguing is this idea that you're writing about how new workers, employees, prospective employees can assimilate into the workplace, knowing that many people are entering the workplace in a very different way from what they used to. And depending on when they graduated college or didn't graduate college and just went into the workforce, many of those people experienced it differently with the pandemic. So I'm going to stop at that point and you're going to take us right into it. If you could just give us the backdrop of the book and what should people expect to read about when they open the
Yeah.
pages.
Well, thank you. That was actually a wonderful summary. So, one of the things that I've noticed really throughout the time of COVID and then the post COVID workforce is that there were some really significant challenges with new graduates coming into the workforce, having been completing their entire college experience online, not having opportunity for in person internships, workplaces being fully remote. Then they're coming into the workplace. They don't really know what to expect. They haven't had any exposure in person. And likewise, you have a workforce that has been operating differently since COVID, but is the formative time of these individuals that are working in this workforce, they have been consistently in person. They've had interns, they've had trainees, they've had experiences for new employees. And those are completely different now with this younger generation coming into the workforce. And so there's a really significant gap. There's a gap in expectations. There's a gap in skill set. There's a gap with just socially. How do people interact with one another? How do you show up in the workforce? What do you expect out of your employer? And then likewise, what does your employer expect out of you? And so I just feel this need to help close that gap in some way. And I've worked a lot with the younger generations coming out of school and trying to help them establish their footing in the workplace. And I thought that this was a really great way to be able to introduce these sort of ideas, this behind the curtain of what HR professionals expect, what hiring managers are looking for, and what it takes to be successful. So the book itself is really around how to interview for jobs, how to stand out in interviews, how to interview appropriately, how to, once you do get the job, how to be successful in those first 90 days, and how to work with different generations in the workforce. And my hope is that with this very, very simple to read, easy to understand guide, that they will be getting something that's a little bit different than their education. When they're in college, they're getting information about the field of which they're going to be working, but they're not necessarily getting a lot around how to enter the workplace. And so I'd really like to be able to help close that gap. And ultimately, I believe employers have also some onus in this where they have to meet in the middle, and they have to understand that this generation coming out of school has had a really different experience, and they expect different things out of the workplace, and they also offer different things that some of us in the more experienced generations maybe don't have.
The more mature phases, as we
That's
sometimes
correct.
call them.
Yes.
So let me ask this question, Shad, before I'm sure you have some questions for Kate too, but what do you think some of the most significant universal gaps are with new people, with people that are newly entering the workforce?
Well, I think one, they have lived a life entirely on social media. So the idea to have to interact face to face with people is just not as prevalent as it was when I was the same age, where everything was face to face. Now there is an awkwardness, a nervousness, an inability to communicate live with people in the way that for me, for you, probably it was just how it was. It was very simple. It's a skill now that has to be taught. So, what are the things that matter to people that are really interviewing you, that are having conversations with you? What are the things that make you stand out? What should you do and not do in interviews? And then the other thing, too, that I'm seeing a lot of, you know, I'm not ashamed to say I'll be 48 this year. And something that was always sort of drilled into my head was the importance of staying late, showing up, going above and beyond, writing thank you notes, being appreciative. And that is just different now. And so when students do these things, they touch the older generations that are typically the ones that are doing the hiring. So, how are you standing out in a way that resonates with the people that are interviewing you? And then I also think that there's a general need and desire, which is wonderful, that I'm seeing from a lot of recent grads. They want to be in the office, they want that face to face time, but then they get it and they're not really sure how to work within those situations. They're just they're lacking in the abilities to just have natural sounding conversations. And so those are some of the key things that I'm finding. There's a desire to do these things, but there's also a work-life balance desire. And this, I'm going to stay, working 12, 15-hour days to prove my worth is just not something that many kids coming out of school are willing to do. They don't want to compromise that. And that's okay. I think the hustle culture that we've all sort of been accustomed to is rightfully maybe disintegrating a bit with this new generation.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see though when there's a time that enough time elapses where the newer generations or the younger generations who are entering and carrying the load in the workforce who don't have that same work ethic and grind, like what will the future workplace look like when that becomes the new normal, right? So that it's all kinds of spiraling
Yes.
conversations there, but that is interesting. But I want to ask you one more thing and then I'm going to turn it over to Shad. And that is regarding the social media, like that's a big deal right now. I mean, we could talk just about that for 24 hours and all of the interesting challenges that that's presenting and how I mean, every day you read about how people are taking everything AI says at face value and chat GPT. And it's just a lot of spider webbing challenges that are coming out of that. But in the book that you're still writing, are you going to recommend to the readers how maybe they create some type of balance or some type of moderation around social media, just to maybe reverse or counteract the almost the desensitization they have around it today?
Wow, it's a really good question. And I think that telling people to stop using social media or to lessen their use of social media, in my experience, is a bit unrealistic. These students who are graduating college, that is the world they grew up in. That they know that like we know how to pick up a book and read a book, right? Like that's just the world they grew up in. But how do you take some of the expectations that you have now as a result of growing up in the age of social media? This idea that if somebody doesn't like my post, I'm a failure. this fear of putting themselves out there in uncomfortable situations because of being judged, this idea that all eyes are on me at all times, this competitiveness around how do I look? How do I behave? Am I behaving the right way? It's actually created almost a shyness in the workplace, a fear of being creative, putting yourself out there, whiteboarding, things that, are just very commonplace in the workplace that I grew up in. And that's just not happening quite as much. So I think that there's a recognition that the skill set isn't worse, although there's plenty of things that we could say about social media and what it has done to people in general, but the skill set is different. And when you think about AI and you think about the ways that it will be used going forward, will there be a need to work 12 and 15-hour days? Maybe not. Maybe some of the reasons that this sort of hustle culture and the grind has taken over our generations is more related to the fact that we didn't have the ability to automate some of the more mundane task, busy work that we had to catch up on. I know, in my experience, even recently in the HR space, most of my day is conversations, calls, and the late nights is catching up. But utilizing tools like AI has actually made that considerably easier and much less time consuming. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to your question. I'm sure it'll be really interesting to see as it continues to unfold.
It's absolutely a fascinating concept for a book. So yeah, something you said really struck me. And I think having three kids that are all in their 20s, early to late 20s, it's a profoundly different culture. And there's this kind of almost instant gratification that they need from that. You put a post and then they're checking to see how many likes they've got it. It's so that or the skill set to put in work for the long haul, that strategic thought process of this project's going to take a week. It's going to take an hour sometimes, right? It's not even that big of a deal. How do you frame that? I mean, so we're asking you to tell us a little bit about, kind of what you got in the book, but how are you framing that with those folks that are so used to that instant gratification syndrome?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different things. One is normalizing disappointment. So,
Mm,
not everything you say to your boss or to
yeah,
your leaders in your company is going to be implemented, taken. The idea that you can just simply have conversations and give feedback and it doesn't have to be acted upon is something that you just have to get over.
yeah,
Like, that's just the reality.
yeah,
Not
yeah,
everything is actionable, right? So, helping people understand, when they're contributing to things in the workplace, having leaders help to say, I need a contributor to give me information. You'll be a part of making a decision. You will be the decision maker. So setting expectations around when feedback is taken and how it's given from younger generations, I think is really helpful to just set the expectation that we're really just in listening mode. We're probably not going to do anything with this yet is good, because then people
hmm,
understand that nothing is coming of this. Um, and the other thing too is I think that the feedback loops with organizations is going to become more and more critical. And we've seen this already. This idea that if you're surveying your employees and they don't hear anything about the survey, it's useless. So giving feedback and really moving towards this consistent feedback loop with managers, with organizations as a whole, with surveying, those are things that have been discussed up until now, but it's going to become even more critical with this new generation because they want that feedback. They
yeah.
want to know,
Well, that's
what
how
am I
they've lived their
doing?
life, right? Is on
That's
instant
exactly right.
feedback. Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah.
absolutely.
The other thing is, and I've implemented this now in two organizations that I've been a part of, are short-term sort of feedback models. So programs that allow managers to give very quick feedback where an employee can submit their feedback, can submit what it is that they're doing. A manager takes 5 minutes to gloss over it. They get the information and they can respond to it real time online. So it doesn't necessarily have to be face-to-face one-on-ones, but they're getting consistent feedback from their managers around what are the priorities, what are the expectations, what are your challenges. So I think those are ways that we can sort of work with both groups of individuals in the workplace. So normalizing disappointment, but also understanding that, it's a job. Like, I'm sure, my parents used to always say, like, that's why it's called work. It's not called play, right? Like there's
Yeah.
it's a job. And so having small stages of wins throughout the process of longer term projects is another way that people can get some of that instant gratification as well.
I think
Yeah.
that's fascinating because I think that is a great takeaways for leaders in dealing with this new generation of people entering the workforce, right? So those small stages of wins, which Larry and I've talked about this in various other topics, right? Celebrating small milestones consistently, right? Being able to give that. I love that idea of kind of this 5 minute instant feedback instead of a week to week, face to face type of concept, right? Give me your input. What are you doing? Let me give you feedback. And I love it in that electronic format because it mirrors their learning style. So I think if I were to ask you as you're thinking and working through the concept in the context of the book, what's the value if I am obviously an older leader? If I'm an older leader, what's the value of me picking up this book to be able to understand those people entering my workforce?
Larry, were you going to say something too? I didn't want to interrupt
Well,
you.
before we went into another neighborhood, I wanted to hang in this one for just
Okay,
another
we're
minute.
coming back to that though.
We're going to come back to that neighborhood because one of the things we like to talk about here too is like, and we talked about up front, like what could the leader do? And you started going there. And so I just want to stay there for 1 minute. I like what you said a lot when we talked about the idea that how the leader takes an opportunity to frame and somewhat classify the type of feedback, the type of information sharing. So I think what you said was, hey, we're not at this stage, we're just taking information. So I think one of the things that leaders could take away from this conversation already, along with all the other things we talked about, is this idea that think about how when you're eliciting feedback from people that you're taking the opportunity to frame what the expectation is about how it's going to be used. I think that's
Yeah.
really critical because I think this idea in the workplace of being heard and being included, really important. Everyone says that's real. We all know that's important, but it's equally important to set the expectation of what we want from people and what they should expect we're going to do with that information and that feedback. It's just really important because it goes back to where you started, Kate, which is like, understand you're going to maybe be disappointed at times in the workplace. It's part of that. The only other thing I just want to touch on is this idea that we all, as leaders, want to have a transformational environment. We want to be transformative leaders. We don't want it to feel transactional. However, to your point, you also went here. So I'm just double clicking on this one, which is this idea that at the end of the day, it's still work. So even if we want to have a transformational experience and transformational like relationships, there's always going to be transactional elements. And for people to remember when you're going to work, you want to have a rich experience. Your employer wants to create an engaging workplace, but you're still there to work. And that's part of that expectation setting. I think that's very important for the organization to figure out how they anchor that message and balance that along with everything else we're talking about. So just wanted to make sure we hit on that because you touched some really key things around what the leaders could
Yeah.
do differently.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of the same skills that we talk about in what makes effective leadership. It's just using it in a different way, right? With more intention towards this. Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah. Exactly it.
exactly.
Yeah.
So Shad, all right, back
Fantastic.
to the other neighborhood. I
Okay. So
apologize.
yes, that I'm an old therapist that has young therapists working for me. So if I'm going to buy this book, what could I get?
Well, I think the first part is right, recognizing that you have a problem. I think that's always the first part, right? Like, what is the problem that we're experiencing in the workforce? And what is making you maybe unable to or less able to connect with your employees. And by connecting with your employees more in a better way, you will have better outcomes and better results, which ultimately is the goal of work, right? Is to have good, successful, high performing teams. And in order to do that, we know as leaders, we have to individually consider all of your
Yeah.
employees. We have to, moderate. We have to figure out how to adapt to different styles. That's our job as a leader. And this is just another way of adapting to somebody else's
Yeah.
style.
Yeah.
And also I think that there's a compassion element to understanding that there was a lot taken away from our kids during the time of COVID. They had to develop, grow in these incredibly formative years without having human connection, being sequestered in bedrooms, learning in ways that are just not typically appropriate learning styles, especially for developing brains. And so now you have unleashed this group of individuals that are just, they're a little bit lost. And how do we provide our knowledge, wisdom, experience to support them in figuring out how to make the workplace work for them as well? Because that's our responsibility, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. As leaders, 100%. Well, it's just compassionate human beings, 100%. Yeah,
Correct.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So interesting question, and I don't know if there's a true like specific answer to it, but where did the idea for this come from? Was there just kind of a light bulb aha moment, like this needs to be a book?
I've always written. I've always been a writer. I wrote poetry when I was younger. I've just always loved the act of writing, and especially just from a therapeutic standpoint. Like, I find it to be very therapeutic to just get my feelings out any way I can, right? And writing just always was the way for me. And so I don't even want to bore you with the details of how many scraps of paper and post-it notes and notebooks and phone notes I have of just ideas, thoughts, and I've been kind of pouring them into my LinkedIn posts over the last 10, 15 years. And there's just always been this common theme of servant leadership, of helping others, of how do we make things better for the next generation. And as I was sort of consolidating this when I left my last role, I thought, I do a lot of work with interns, with hiring, with job fairs, and I've hired and interviewed thousands of people. And the complaints continue to be the same thing from managers, leaders, anybody in the hiring process, which is like these kids today, that mentality, right? And every generation has it, right? These kids today. And I thought, well, does it really have to be that way? Like, can't we just help these kids instead of just being like, oh, I can't believe they don't understand XYZ? And so I started really pulling from all of my notes, and I thought, well, I have a lot of ways that I think I can help. And I think it's really just being honest and transparent about what the issue is. And I submitted several outlines and the first couple of chapters to several different publishers, and they all wanted it. And I thought, oh, okay, well, I guess we're going to do it then. And that was how it started.
So you
It's
identified a
so
need without even realizing. I mean, that's fantastic. Yeah, yeah.
Kind of.
it's
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
interest it's so important though, that the topic continues to be talked about, because where my mind starts to go is that if we don't start talking about it and doing more to address it, moderate it, support it, uh, what's it going to look like over time as we get further from what the workforce looked like before? Maybe the more of a grind, maybe more of a hustle culture, but how far do we go in the opposite direction? And when those workers are not in the workforce, where are those, individuals who have more of those qualities that we talked about when the lights are still on at 9 o'clock at night? Like, it's a very interesting proposition in terms of what it's going to look like in the next 2 decades. So
Yeah.
having these conversations now is just so critical, because I think we can argue that the pandemic just forced the tipping point.
I
And
couldn't agree more. Yep. We're really, I feel, at this inflection point where we need the skill set of younger workers, especially with AI, with all of the changes with technology, with how fast things move. We need that. It's critical for the workplace. But also, they need us. They need people that have been in the workforce. They need the experience and the understanding, because ultimately, most business is based on relationships. And if you aren't able to form relationships in the workplace, to gain knowledge from those who came before you, to learn from those who are coming after you, and really to meet in that middle ground, I don't really know where we go from there. And I think part of me is a little nervous about that, which is why I'm like, maybe I should do something to try to help.
on that note, Kate, do you talk about that, or will you talk about in the book where it does take both partners on the dance floor, and it's a willingness is what you're talking about, and what we all have talked about. It's a willingness to appreciate the other generations in the workforce as well, and what wisdom and value they bring to the relationship, as well as us understanding the newer, younger generations to support them and have compassion about what they've been through and what got them here, right? Do you talk about that, or will you?
I do. Yep. There is a section in
Great.
the book about working with different generations in the workforce. What is important to generations in the workforce now? What will connect with different generations in the workforce? And the book following this book will be dedicated and will be for individuals of our age, how to work better with the younger generation.
Excellent. You already have a sequel like coming here. So
I do.
this
I
is
do.
great.
There's almost a trilogy. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Okay. Oh,
Very good.
what do you have just for our listeners, do you have a date or time horizon when you think the book is going to go to publish?
I would love to see it in the summer, but we will
Okay.
see.
All right. All right. Well,
It's an
we'll stay
aggressive
posted to
timeline.
that. Yeah. Shad, any closing thoughts?
No, I mean, I think it's definitely a needed niche. I think, not to get too philosophical here, but in kind of society today, anything that we can do to get people to connect, and especially to get people to connect in the workplace, is absolutely critical, right? I mean, we see how divisive everything is right now. At the core of what you're talking about is understanding who you're with and understanding how you operate, and understand and appreciate that we have differences, and then being able to work around those and work through those. So I think I look forward to when it comes out. And I think, Kate, if we get to summer or we get close to release date, we have you back, because I think it would be great to take insights from that and just really kind of reinforce it. I think anything we can do to make leaders more impactful, but actually just people more connected, would be great. Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed.
Couldn't
Kudos.
agree more.
Yeah.
Well, Kate, thanks for joining us today in the studio, and we will stay closely connected and wish you the best of luck moving forward. And we'll definitely stay posted and have you back in the near future.
Yeah. And definitely on the sequel. Us old guys need that for the new people.
I'm still trying to imagine what the third leg
I
of
don't
the
know what that
stool of the
is. Yeah.
trilogy would
I don't
be.
know what that
So
We'll
is.
that's
see.
going to be that might be the real reason to have her back for
Yeah.
the
Right.
next interview.
Might be.
Very
Well, it
good.
was such a pleasure. Thank you both so
Thank
much.
you.
Absolutely. Look forward to talking to you. All right. Well, hey, this has been great, great information. Obviously, much more to come. Kate, is there any place that people can find you, connect with you? It's the social media, LinkedIn, any of that? Do you have a plug that you want to put out there for people that are listening?
Yeah, sure. I am the less famous Kate
I was
McKinnon,
going to say,
so make
when you
sure you get
search
the right
you,
one. Yep, yep. Kate McKinnon, HRSolutions.com is
there
my
you go.
website, and anybody can find me on LinkedIn as well.
Perfect. So I would, if you're interested in a topic, which you should be, I mean, this is about connecting at the core of everything. Or and so if you, in the same context, found value in this and you found us by accident, follow us at LinkedIn and Lean In Leaders. And as always, we encourage you to grow, develop, and continue to always lean in leaders.